we sent out a newsletter. If you didn't get it, you can go to our website and either click on be part of our, to sign in to be part of our mailing list. Or you can go to multimedia and click on newsletters, and I put the link to all of them there. You can pick them up. And what we announced in this one, if you haven't already gotten it, is, and I'm trying to click on it as I'm speaking. Anyway, we are, during the 7 days that we're going to be in Nashville when my son's at Vanderbilt, we're going to play, they're not pre-recorded shows, they are shows that were workshops, MP4s of workshops, and of course there'll just be the audio on the radio show. But
live workshops.
Yeah, and they're ones that you can purchase on the website under shop. But what we're going to do is the first, and they'll be in this order: Healing Through Relationships, Part 1, Healing Through Relationships, Part 2, Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing, Communication, Did You Hear What I Think I Said, Part 1, Communication, Did You Hear What I Think I Said, Part 2, and then Codependence to Interdependence, Part 1 and Part 2. And so those are the ones we'll be playing from December 26th until January the 3rd. And like we said, they're only ones that you can access online, so plan to be live with us to listen to the shows on those days and hold us in the space of love while we're going through everything at Vanderbilt, and for my son Ryan's ultimate outcome. And since Michael's with us, I'm going to turn it over to him. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. Cherish you.
Cherish you.
And yeah, just so the live word, it's a couple of ways to interpret what you just heard if you don't have the brain cells. So first of all, we're going to be in Nashville with Ryan. He's having a brain surgery. Fortunately, they're telling us that this tumor that's about the size of a golf ball is probably benign, so he'll go through this and have an 8-week recovery period and be pretty much 100% except for a loss of hearing in the one ear. It's between the brain stem and the auditory nerve, and apparently they're going to have to clip the auditory nerve to take this tumor out. So hold the space for us in that. And then when we say live workshop, we won't be doing the radio show live during that week. We've put together a special assembly of live workshops where are pre-recorded. If you went to our website and clicked catalog, you could go and buy these workshops. Otherwise, they're not available. So we're going to take that series out of our live catalog. We won't be doing archives of them so that we've still got them for sale, either streaming or we've got DVDs and CDs. And, we do everything we can do to make everything we can free, all the support we can possibly offer, including the app and what have you. So if you're benefiting, we invite you to support us and understand that we're not going to turn these into archives of the workshop, because there are workshops workshop recordings that we normally, at least get some minimum on cash flow from, since we stopped traveling and doing workshops live. So those will only be available during those days. And the idea is to give you a boost in your, beginning of the year, Christmas time, holiday time, all of that goes together, family coming together, usually for most people gives many opportunities to learn forgiveness. And so we're going to do that whole series on what do you do with your relationships if there's trauma and drama? How do you communicate? So we'll be doing the communication aspect. How much of your life is based in codependence? What is codependence? Well, if I've ever said to somebody, you made me really, whatever word follows, and it doesn't matter whether it's happy or sad, then you're in codependence. And so recovery from codependence means that you recover the truth of who you are that's been lost in a mind that thinks that what's going on inside of it is really outside of it. And so what we're looking to do is to bring an understanding of that process and the tools. So that week will be a concentrated presentation of our tools from healing through relationships, from codependence to interdependence, communication, Did you hear what I think I said? We'll be going over that process and the Mind Shifters tool. So all those tools will be included in that week. We invite you to mark your calendar. And if you would, we'd invite you to support us by letting everybody far and wide know. If you're not on our mailing list, drop Jeannie an email at jeanie@whyagain.org and ask her to put you on. Or you can go to our website, whyagain.org, whyagain.org, and at the bottom of the page you can sign up for the mailing list, and that will give you a copy of the flyer. So if you don't have it, drop Jeannie a note, ask her for it, and if you would, please, anybody anywhere on the planet that you think might be having problems either in relationships or communication or codependence or what's going on in their minds, they'll benefit from a very concise presentation of the tools. And so if you'd pass those along, we'd appreciate it. And of course, with it being the end of the year, sometimes people need to write off some extra money from their taxes. So if you are in that position, if you're benefiting from this work, then we invite you to consider supporting us with a donation as well. And if you want to do that, there is a link in the newsletter, which you can go to our website, again, whyagain.org. Go down to the very bottom of the page, and you'll see a link that says Donate Here, and it will take you to PayPal. You don't need to have a PayPal account. You can use, whatever form of payment you want, but we use that for people to go through to receive our donations. So if you choose to do that, it would be deeply appreciated. And at this point, with all that's going on in our world and the fact that we're not traveling anymore, it's created a bit of a crunch in terms of cash flow, so it would be helpful if you're in a position to and you want to support us, drop a donation in our direction. Other than that,
plus we're going to have added expenses when we go to Vanderbilt that we didn't plan on, and that's okay, but if you could make your year-end donations sooner than waiting till December 31st, that would definitely help us out too.
Yeah, for sure. And as you're listening to, seeing as how we won't be on the air live, although these are recordings of live workshops, I'd invite everybody to have a pen and paper available for that week, and any and every question or refinement on everything we're presenting. Seeing as how you won't be able to quiz us live as you normally can, I invite you to keep a notebook and paper for that week, and I would be delighted if from that week of workshops we have 2 or 3 weeks of conversations about questions and refinements and shared experiences and how can we support you. So, and of course the lead workshop, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? We've covered that over and over. It's been played recently, the live version. But if you haven't seen that and you want to do the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, up until I guess 2 years ago, it was one of the workshop audio or video recordings that you had to purchase in order to get it unless you attended a live workshop. But we did a version of that. It's actually the latest one we've done. I guess it's going on about 2 years ago now. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you can get to the YouTube channel by going to whyagain.org. And on the right-hand side, you'll see all the social media links. Just click YouTube, and you'll be on our YouTube channel. And you can look for Why Is This Happening to Me Again? There's a live presentation of that workshop that's now available free on the YouTube channel. So you can pick that up there. And again, questions, make notes, ask questions. That's what we're here to do. And one of the wonderful aspects of asking questions is, in your process, your mind has probably gone places that I've never thought of going or never understood how to go. And by sharing your questions in your process, you'll give myself and Jeannie and everyone who's listening to the show the opportunity to look at another perspective on the tools and develop another level of understanding and insight and application. So your questions are really important. We really seriously want your questions. And if you're new to this work, you're welcome to get on the show every day, day after day after day, for the next 2 days or 10 days or 3 months or 6 months or 2 years. Whatever your process is, we're here to support you. And The reason for that is because your process is my process is everybody else's. One of the games of the world is, oh, mine's so different. No, nobody's is any different. Oh, but Michael, you don't understand what I've been through. Yeah, I understand what you've been through. Been there, done that. In terms of my own process, and have worked with people, I mean, I could tell you stories that would curl your hair of some of the stuff people have been through. And each person at each stage of their process develops a unique questioning ability that, when shared, gives a gift to anyone else who's interested in moving through whatever is happening in that particular situation. I love it when they asked Albert Einstein if he were given a problem to solve and he had 1 hour or he would be killed, what would he do? And his answer was, I would spend 55 minutes asking questions, and then I'd spend the last 5 minutes solving the problem. So really it is the questions that are important. So we appreciate those who have the courage to call in and stay with it and go through the process. You're a gift to everybody, and we appreciate you. And beyond that, Ms. Jeannie, do we have any questions in the chat room? Anything happening from the email questions or from the app? By the way, we do have, if you're new to the show, the world's only forgiveness app. And you can download it free if you go to your app store on your phone, whether you've got an iPhone or an Android, and type in the words Heartland, Heartland, one word, Heartland Aramaic, Aramaic, Aramaic Forgiveness. You'll see an app with a glowing heart, and that's our app. And you can download it free, and Jeannie, the genius Jeannie put behind it, and the hours, I can't count how many days. She was up at 5 o'clock so she could be on the phone with the gentleman in India who developed it and has updated it. I don't know, what are we in, about the 6th or 7th iteration, Jeannie? And so that's a process, a tool that's there from within the app. You can ask questions about anything that's going on related to the work. Hit send. Jeannie will receive an email with that question in it. We'll answer it during the show and discuss it and send you back a link to the show. So another way we can support you. So, and the app, because a lot of what people deal with is extremely intimate, privacy is a big concern. So one of the things we did when we developed the app was made sure it was 1,000% private. Nobody can see a word you put in that app but you. We can't. We have no access to it whatsoever. We purposely set it up that way so that you could feel comfortable really doing whatever you needed to do in terms of your work. And you'll notice when you download it that it only asks for one permission. Most apps want to be able to dial your phone and access your hard drive and do this and do this and do that and do that and send emails and send texts. And it's like, no, it only asks for one permission, and that one permission is, I need to use the internet in order to operate. That's the only permission it asks for. When you do your first worksheet, it will ask you if you want to print it. You can turn it into a PDF so you can save your work, which I suggest you do because those worksheets are gold, and in the future when you go back and review them, they'll have another whole layer of gifts to give to you. But if you do print them as a PDF, it will ask you for one additional permission, that is the place to save the PDFs that you're going to save. But they're the only two permissions involved in the app, so that you can be assured that it's totally private. And so, any questions, Ms. Jeannie? Anything on your mind?
No, that's about it, and we do not have any hands up. So if you're on the switchboard, press 1, and it'll put a hand up, and we'll know that you want to talk and that you're not just listening. And if you're on another station, the call-in number again is 563-999-3581, and press 1.
And we're here to have a conversation with you.
And there
if
are
we
no
don't
hands.
have any hands up, okay, well then let's just rock on with covering the Book of Thomas. And the Book of Thomas, if you're not familiar with it, is a text that was not canonized by the political people who created the New Testament canon. And It is a text that's written in, rather than a story format, is a simple set of sayings that are purported to be the secret teachings of Yeshua. And so these sayings, we're delving into them because there's depth that really needs to be looked at. And so we're at saying 61. If you want to catch up with what we've done prior to this, and several people have said this has really been a beneficial series, then you can go back. There's actually a page. Is the page on our website, Jeannie, of whyagain.org/Book of Thomas, or where all the links are to our YouTube?
No, I don't have it on that. I guess I can put it there, but if they go to YouTube, they can click on playlist, and they're all grouped together under the Book of Thomas there.
Cool. Okay, and if you're on YouTube, just type in Michael, Michael, space RYCE, and you'll see our channel, and you can go looking through the pages to check out what we've got. So we've done 60, and I've actually talked about this number 61 because it's a fairly convoluted for most people when they first read it, because the statement 61 says, two shall rest upon a bed, one shall die and the other live. It's like, well, what the heck does that mean? What's he saying here? And then he goes on to with a conversation from a woman named Salome, and she talks about how you've mounted my bed and eaten at my table. And so basically what Yeshua here is saying is that we're all the same. You can't tell from the external whether someone is alive or dead. You can't tell from their external behavior unless you watch for behavior and language-based regulatory speech that's based in love. You can certainly tell that way. But otherwise, everybody eats and sleeps and, spends time in bed, whatever they're doing there, without getting into that conversation. And so what he's talking about here is uncovering the truth of your being. That's what he's talking about life. Life is not because a body can walk and talk. Simply because a body can walk and talk does not mean there's any human life in it. And we say that quite assuredly, having asked the question of literally tens of thousands of people over the years, and the question being, have you ever held a newborn? And then in asking that question of people, we ask people to clear their minds, go into a space where they're simply tapping into the energy of that newborn, and to describe the essence of that newborn. And literally, of the tens of thousands of people who've asked that question, every word that shows up when somebody describes their newborn experience is always some variation on the theme of love. You listen to Yeshua, and Yeshua says, I come to bring you life. He doesn't say, I come to bring you dogma and doctrine. I come to bring you life. And I'll offer that in 50-plus years of developing this work, the best definition I've found for life yet is that life is love flowing through a cell. One raging, screaming, yelling, crazy time, doing, some of the crazy things that are going on in our culture right now. There's no human life there. I mean, there's a human form, and it's animated, but there's no human life there. That person is dead. Literally, in the sense of a human life. Person without, that's not functioning from the active presence of love, is not human. That's where that one young man who is following Yeshua, and he's like, hey, this is great stuff, man. I'm going to come follow you, but first I need to go bury my mother and my father. He says to him, no, let the dead bury the dead. He's saying, you're going back. Yes, there's a tradition, and the tradition as a young Jewish man is you have to take care of your parents till they're dead, and bury them. So, young man, you say you were going to follow me, but you might be gone for the next 40 years. I don't know how long your parents are going to live. You don't know. But if you're going to do this, then, and what he is, don't go back to the world where people are not functioning out of love and hope you can find human life there, because you can't find any of it there. All you can find is the powerful movie about it, tradition. Tradition dictates ways to behave. Behaving the ways tradition dictate is one of the ways to void your human life. It's a set of rules you have to follow, then you get to be human. You're human and you express a certain way, and somebody says, oh, there are the rules. But you can follow all the rules of being human and have no experience of the active presence of love. That's what Yeshua is saying here. One person laying on the bed, they're dead. The other one's alive. They're both animated human forms, but is there human life? And he's saying, you've got to look pretty closely. You may appear to be alive, but appearance is not the same as actually being alive. So this particular passage in his conversation with Salome has him taking us in the direction of functioning as being whole rather than being divided. One being filled with light, and if one is divided from that light, then that one will be filled with darkness. Following a set of rules will never produce a human life. It will produce the appearance of a human life. Only the use of the tools, if we've lost our human lives to hostility and fear, only the use of tools will restore us to the awareness of our human lives, and then we'll find that we'll automatically fall in harmony with the quote-unquote rules that somebody laid down that said, here's how you're supposed to act. You can do all the actions that a person with a true human life would do without having a human life. All you have to do is follow the rules. But that doesn't give you the objective of Yeshua's work. You must come from being. You remember we spent, when we covered the Kabor's manuscript, the Enlightenment book, and Yeshua says, the light of the body is the eye. Now that's a Greek translation. In Aramaic, what we'd say is, the light of the body is perception. The constructs of your mind are designed to be the guide for your earthly life. So this passage, he goes on to say, if therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. But when thine eye is evil, and it ties back in with this passage where it talks about being divided, if you're divided, then your body will be full of darkness. And then, and this comes from Matthew 6:22 and 23, until you realize the Aramaic words here, it makes no sense. So the last sentence in that passage is, if therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? Well, that makes no sense at all. If the light is dark, well, the light can't be darkness. If it's light, it's light. It can't be darkness. So that word light must mean something other than I switch on a light and I see a light, or the light of being. So when we read that passage correctly from Matthew, he's saying perception is the light of the body, painted on the inside of our eyeballs by the mind, and most people think that what's happening on the inside of their eyeballs, that they're actually looking at something outside of them, which is one of the biggest lies ever. That's one of the things that keeps people asleep. What's painted on the inside of your eyeballs, perception, is a construct of your mind. If the constructs of your mind are based in hostility and fear, which in Aramaic would be darkness, then he's saying how deep will your darkness become. So if the light, the guide, the pictures painted on the inside of your eyeballs are based in hostility or fear, what kind of crazy things have you done in your life? I mean, think about it. One of the questions we ask people in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, other than have you ever held a newborn child, is have you ever done anything you regret? Anybody here? Anybody ever done anything you regret? So go back to 1 or 2 or 10 different times where you did something that today you say you regret it. And tell me, what was the light that guided you? What was the perception that guided you to do that behavior? And you know what it was? It was darkness. It was something based in hostility or fear. When we ask that question, nobody's ever said, We say, what were you feeling? What was the emotional content within you when you did that thing that you regret? Nobody's ever said, oh, I was just total love. No. Now, we have had people who occasionally will throw in the word love, but then when I quiz them, it's not love. It's more like the desire for satiation. It's a desire for gratification. It's a demand for control. It isn't love at all. So nobody's ever used the word, when we ask people the question, tell me what you were experiencing emotionally when you did something you regret, the day that you regret. And it's always 1,000% of the time something based in hostility or fear. That's what he's referring to here. If the light for you is darkness, if the guide you follow, if the perceptual construct that's painted on the inside of your eyeballs is darkness, then how deep will your darkness become? If you just take this one simple passage, you know that the Greek scriptures, or so-called scriptures, are so disabled as to be insane. You look at what people today, in the name of so-called Christianity, are supporting in the way of language and behavior in the world. Just look in the political realm. And you know that darkness is the light for those lives, is the guide that they're following. And so when you just dig out just this one simple statement from Matthew, you try to figure it out from in the English translation from the Greeks, the light of the body is the eye. Well, that's just stupid. It just makes no sense. Therefore, every single of our body will be filled with light. But if your eye is evil, the word evil here in Aramaic, again, get back to the Aramaic. Sin is an archery term, and you were on the archery range and you fired at the bullseye and you missed. The scorekeeper yelled sin. That was if you missed the bullseye. And if you missed the target altogether, that was called evil. If you're in a situation in your life where you've missed the target altogether, then the light for you was darkness. The guide you followed, the aim that you took was from darkness. And so how great is the darkness you produced out of that mind? And that's just one single simple idea in 3 sentences out of the Aramaic. And when you go back to the Aramaic, there is so much brilliance and wisdom there that it's mind-boggling. And this brings me back, a while back I shared a piece from a man named Rumi, who was a Sufi mystic back in the 13th century. And here's what he wrote, and this just kind of ties in with this idea. It's a validation from a different perspective, and Rumi says, remember the deep root of your being, the presence of your Creator, love. Remember your human life. Give yourself to the one who already owns your breath and your moments. If you don't, he says, you'll be like the man who takes a precious dagger and hammers it into his kitchen wall for a peg to hold his dipper gourd. You'll be wasting valuable keenness and forgetting your dignity and purpose. The person who's lying on the bed dead and the person who's lying on the bed alive, you can't tell the difference in the type of death that he's talking about here. But Rumi describes it very well. The one who's dead is the one who's wasting their valuable keenness and forgetting their dignity and purpose. Then statement 62, unless we've got a question on that one. That's a really powerful statement, that number 61.
There are no hands up.
Okay, well, 62, Yeshua says, I tell my mysteries to those who are worthy of my mysteries. Now, you've got to be careful of the Greek. You look at the Greek gods and what did they do? I mean, these dudes slaughtered their own families. They raped their own mothers. They controlled and wanted control over everything and everybody. And that has become the Western idea of the Creator. Creator has favorites. If you're one of the chosen ones, well, if the Creator put the breath of life in you, you're one of the chosen ones. That's all. Men made up that whole thing of, well, there's a special group, and we're part of the special group. When the Greeks translate this one, I tell my mysteries to those who are worthy of my mysteries. That makes it sound like, well, there are some who are valuable and some who aren't. And of course, what do the kings do? They tell you you're one of the ones who's really not valuable, but I'll give you a few little scraps and then you'll do my bidding. When I want something, I want you to go make war on somebody and steal their property because I want it, then if I can keep you believing you're so invaluable, and then you become valuable because I call on you for your services to go kill people so I can steal their property. That whole mindset is missing in the Aramaic. So Yeshua is not speaking here of that worthy of my mysteries. He's not speaking worthy in terms of, do you have value? It's not a put down in Aramaic, making one of greater worth than the other. It doesn't refer to the sense of value in the way the world thinks of value. But what he's saying here is only one who's done their inner work, who's developed the brain cells, will have the experience to understand what I'm saying, will have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. That's the only one who's going to be able to receive what I'm offering. It won't be you can't receive it because you're one of the unworthy ones that God created. That's that whole Greek insertion of insanity into the teachings of Yeshua. But you do have to do your work. You do have to develop the brain cells. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of preachers out there. I had somebody the other day talking about, you sure wouldn't want your child being at a library where a transgender person come in and did a reading of a book, would you? I said, well, actually, I'd rather have my child there than in a church where some preacher who hasn't done his or her inner work pounds that child into the ground and tells them what a sinner they are and they're going to hell. Yeah, I'd rather have them in the library with that transgender person. There are so many people suffering in this world from so-called Christianity, who've had their dignity taken away by the Greek lie of, don't you know you're a sinner? Well, you got to know what the word sin means to even start to have that conversation. And again, all it means is it's off the mark. And one who is off the mark, and that means all of us. Yes, we've all been off the mark, no question about it. But that does not change our basic nature nor our basic character. The guy who stands in front of the kids and says, you're a sinner and you're going to hell if you don't do what I tell you to do, he's one of those that Yeshua said, better than a millstone should be put around their neck than one should offend one of these little ones. And you look at how many people have come out of the so-called Christian churches and they're in prisons and they're doing drugs and they're committing suicide and they're abusing people and they're thieves. How often does it happen? Go take a look at the numbers. It's horrendous. When Yeshua was talking about you should offend one of these little ones, he was talking about primarily what you do to their minds. So this sense, this idea of value here is not someone who's more valuable than another, but one who's done the work and has the brain cells to understand what's being said. Otherwise, Yeshua uses parables. And then he says, left hand and right hand. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. What's he saying? In essence, he's saying, don't run out and brag to everybody about what wonderful things you've done. Just do your work. Just do your work. Pass it on. Make it available to others. Support people in it. But the person who has to get up on the TV set night after night after night and tell you how they have the best words and the best ideas and the best of the best and the best and the best and the best, they're the best one who's violating this particular directive. Humility in Aramaic does not mean grovel in the earth like a worm, but to look for the highest and best in others, rather than having to brag that you've got the highest and best. And someone who's powerful enough and strong enough and centered enough in being that they can support someone really, truly being their highest and best, even if that someone disagrees with them. So don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. And that's statement 62. And then statement 63, there was a rich man who had many possessions. He said, I will use my possessions, that I may sow and reap and plant and fill my barns with fruit, that I may have need of nothing. These were the thoughts of his heart. And in the night he died. He that has ears, let him hear. Well, you remember there's another, in one of the canonized Gospels, there's a statement about where your heart is, that's where your treasure will be also. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. They're interchangeable. So when he speaks here of this man, that these were the thoughts of his heart, like his whole substance was about his stuff. He already says, it offers, he's rich. He has many possessions. And then he says, I'm going to use my possessions to get more and more and more so that I'll have everything and I'll have need of nothing. And it's nice to be comfortable. But what Yeshua is pointing out here is that if you don't have an inner life, all you've got is the outer, then when the outer's gone, your life is over. It's tantamount to the end. One of the principles that we get into in our workshop, Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment, we talk about the primary purpose of having a human life. And my offering is, at least the best I've arrived at, is that every human being has an identical primary purpose. Our secondary purposes are different, unique and individual. But the primary is the same. And I like to use the example of, let's imagine that we have a child in utero, developing in the womb, and that child has to participate in the building of their own bodies. They have to build a liver and lungs and heart and brain. Imagine they have to actually participate in all of that. And along about, the 3-month point of doing this is a lot of work, a lot to study to know how to put it all together. Imagine this person who's building their body says, I'm tired of this. This is too much work. I quit. I'm not going to do it. At 3 months in the womb, the development of the human body stops because this person stops working at developing it. 6 months later, when they're forcibly ejected into the world called birth, will they have a human form to live through, to express through? No. For all intents and purposes, they will be dead. They will be non-functional because they do not have a viable body to work through. Well, fortunately, we don't have to participate in the development of our physical forms. That's been taken care of for us. But my offering would be that we can come into the world, we can buy into all the pictures that we're taught to paint on the inside of our eyeballs, and like this rich man, we can be focused on all our stuff, make sure the barns are full, the money's there, the fancy car, the fancy house, the fancy airplane. You got the whole thing. How'd that song go? Got the whole world in his hands. But if you've got everything of the world, but you spent no time developing a viable, conscious spiritual body, if you can't be aware outside of what happens in your perceptual mind, then you don't have a spiritual body. And if your so-called physical body dies, then the game is over. If you give to your spiritual development, and the suggestion was always a tithe, and most people think of a tithe as money, but money is actually the least important aspect of tithing. Tithing, I like to use in an acronym TIME, T-I-M-E, time, intelligence, money, and energy, that you take at least 10% of your time to do your spiritual work. That means you put 2.4 hours a day, 24-hour day, 2.4 hours a day into doing your spiritual work. Your intelligence, not my intelligence, not Yeshua's intelligence, but you develop your intelligence, your wisdom, and you apply that to, yes, to your expression in the world, but you reserve at least the first 10% of it for your own development, your own spiritual process. Money, yes, you do devote 10% of your money to your spiritual development and what supports you spiritually. Yes, I think that's important. And then energy, that you take your vital energy. It isn't, many people hear about this thing called spiritual and they go, oh, well, you're supposed to meditate, so, I'll go work my buns off today all day at work, and then I'll get home and I'll flop down in the bed and say, oh, I think I'm going to nap. I mean, meditate for an hour, like that's doing their spiritual work. No, your own original energy, your own original intelligence devoted to the development of your spiritual body. And if you don't do that, then if your physical senses are gone, what do you have left? If you have no other senses through which to experience life. I shared back, it's got to be 2 years or so ago now. I was doing a still point breathing session. In that session, those who've done still point breathing, you're laying down, you're doing it, you're prone, and my eyes are relaxed and I'm breathing away, and all of a sudden I get an intuitive instruction to look down. It's like, my eyes are closed. What am I going to look at? But I follow the direction. I look down, and I'm looking at the only word I can use is a vast field of darkness. It's like I'm seeing more space than I could imagine seeing. And in that field of darkness, there are an uncountable number of lights, small lights dotted throughout this space that's just so huge. I mean, it's almost unfathomable. And I don't have a clue what's going on. I don't have a clue what I'm looking at or why I'm looking down. And I ask, what is this? What am I looking at? And what I was told, what I intuitively, and intuition is one of the parts, or the spiritual faculties, part of the spiritual body. What I was told was that these were my ancestors and the darkness that they were living in. And that they had a request for me, and the request was that I would assist them in processing this darkness. And the implication that I took from that was that since they were not in their bodies, they were not able to process themselves through this darkness. It's like having a human life, having a human form to come into is the opportunity to do this work of cleaning up one's own darkness. And normally if I'm doing the still point session, I'm not talking to myself, but when that request was made, I literally out loud said, yes, I will do that. It was like a privilege. It was like an honor that I could even imagine doing that. And it was interesting because normally when I do a still point session, my cell phone is off. But this particular day, my cell phone was beside me, and I hadn't turned it off. To the second when I out loud said, yes, I will help to process that darkness, my phone rang. My son is in his early 40s, and we have never discussed family ancestry or genetics until that day. And when the phone rang, here's my son, and his first words are, hi, Dad. I'm on Ancestry.com, and I want some information about our ancestors. It was like, instantly the external world gave me confirmation that what I had just been dealing with, what I had just been processing, and what I had said yes to, my son who's in Kansas City, and here I am in Virginia, and he picks up the phone, calls me, and confirms that that's what's going on. And so developing a viable, conscious spiritual body allows us to function outside of the realm of the five senses. If you don't develop those faculties that are outside of the five senses, then if the five senses go, how do you function? Where is your heart? If your heart's in, I got to keep working to get my stuff, well, you'll probably have lots of stuff. Cool. But what happens when your 70 is over? If you do your inner work, does your 70 have to be over? Point Yeshua makes here with this particular one. Many possessions. I want to fill my barns with fruit, so I have need of nothing. And that was the focal point of his heart. So where is your treasure? Where do you spend your time, intelligence, money, and energy? And we invite you to consider that you at least tithe, you at least give 10% to your spiritual work. And if you end up reaching the normal period of a lifetime and your body goes, you will carry on, conscious spiritual being. And the daily benefit of doing that is that your spiritual beingness, your spiritual body, is literally the stuff called love. And when you consciously house in your physiology the presence of love, then life becomes a different game than the brainwash of the world and the insanity of what's gone on in the past. So that's where we want to head, and we're down to about the last 10 minutes. So I'm going to once again just open the door to questions if you're out there in listener land. Again, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, if you've just happened into the show, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show directly. And then if you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel. Jeannie will introduce you by your area code, and we'll have a conversation. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the listener land with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet.
Okay. Well, we've got about 10 minutes. So I'm going to step into 64. And this one, Yeshua says, a man had guests. And when he prepared the dinner, he sent his servant to summon the guests. He came to the first guest and said to him, my master summons you. The gentleman being summoned said, I have money with some merchants. They're coming to me this evening. I will go and give them orders. I pray to be excused from dinner. Let me out of the obligation. So he's like, I'm important. I got something to do with money that's more important than this silly dinner. So I'm not showing up. He went to another and he said to him, my master has summoned thee. He said to him, oh, I just bought a house and they asked me for a day. I just don't have the time. In other words, once again, oh, I'm too important. He goes to the next guest that was invited. My master summons thee. And he said, my friend is about to be married, and I'm to hold a dinner. I shall not be able to come. I pray be excused from your feast. And he went to still another and said to my master summons thee. And this one said, oh, I've bought a village. I go to collect the rent. I shall not be able to come. I pray to be excused. The servant came to his master. He said, you know, everybody that you summoned to dinner have all excused themselves. The master said, well, then go out into the roads. Bring those whom you shall find, that they may dine. The buyers and the merchants shall not enter the places of my Father. And once again, this relates to that last statement of where your heart is, there will be your treasure. If all your attention is on your money, on your possessions, on your work, on your stuff, on the external world, then you've lost the opportunity to develop this viable conscious spiritual body, and it will be like this particular master who invites people to come to this feast. We have all been invited to the feast, literally the feast of eternal life. If you're distracted by the things of the world, then you've turned down that feast. And, you know, if you're too busy, if you're too important in the world, well, there you go. So basically, all of these people who were invited to this, I mean, literally the invitation to each of us is to develop this viable conscious spiritual body and therefore to literally have eternal life. If you don't have that kind of awareness while you're in your body, you know, some people say, well, you know, you die and then you get it. Now, oh yeah, well, you know, after I give my 70 years in and I die, then I'll go to this place where everything will be wonderful. I'll have all that. Like, no, you've got to value it and do your part to develop the faculties that allow you to live there. So if the things that make you important in the world are the things that gather all your time, intelligence, money, and energy, then yeah, you get a lifetime, and it might be a really fun one. But that's not the real feast. Those that are so important in the world will not attain the true feast. And again, the true feast is that of having an eternal spiritual body that expresses through in this world, but is not of this world. If death occurs and you've not experienced the faculties that would lead you into eternal life, then the game is over. And so the invitation of this work is to really, truly devote the last leftover moment, but your original time, the first 2.4 hours a day. I can remember when I was in the business world, before I started to do this work, and I literally worked 18-hour days, 9 days a week. And when I started doing this work, it took me about 6 years to really build the brain cells for, you know, that which I spent the first decade or so of my life doing was a waste of my time. What did I do? And I shifted into doing this work full time. And I'm not inviting or suggesting anybody else do that. But, you know, one of the objectives with this work that we've developed over the last half century plus is to be able to hand someone who's probably been brainwashed into the world, is probably a very devout card-carrying member of the one world universal religion of blame, And the minute that you live in the world of blame, you go into an unconscious creative process. You create from your unconscious what was called in the ancient scriptures your heart. Remember, they said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. If you live in blame, I mean, you're still a creator. You're just as powerful a creator, whether you know it or not, whether it's totally unconscious. But if it's unconscious, you're creating out of unconscious dynamics rather than out of conscious. That's why Yeshua said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life, and you must forgive from your heart the wrongs of your brother. That statement is not a bleeding heart. Forgive this person from your heart. Never forgive anybody for anything. And never forgive yourself, especially. If someone else or yourself deserves or needs pardon, fine. Hand them pardon. That's what letting somebody off the hook is. And then go inside yourself and do the work of forgiveness. Do the work of removing whatever did not belong. Take care of the heart. Take care of the unconscious. Take care any form of hostility or fear that you hold in you. And be willing to forgive it. And again, the word forgive means remove. It doesn't mean let somebody else off the hook, because that particular energy is in you. But rather apply forgiveness to the content of your own heart. And as you forgive, as you remove what never belonged within you, then you're freed of it. And that's the whole objective of this work. You and I are not designed to suffer, though suffering is the lot of most of the world. You and I are not designed for hostility, though hostility is one of the tools the world says you can't survive without. You and I are not designed to hold fear. You know, you listen to those ancient scriptures, and over 300 times they say, fear not, in some way, shape, or form. Over 300 times. And yet, there are those people out there, supposed preachers, that will tell you that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Tell me the universe in which it makes sense to fear love. The Creator is love, remember. Your essential nature is love. That's what you're made of. That's what you're made for. And that's the only thing that you're made to express. If you never pay attention to your heart, then your creative process is lost on the unconscious dynamics that are of the world and of your generations. And you remember that story about the Jews who wandered in the desert for 40 years. That was not the story of a hot, sandy place that was 35 square miles. That was a story of the unconscious. Those who live unconsciously are spoken of in the ancient scriptures as living in the desert. And you remember, if you read that passage, we'll finish with this thought, you read that passage, and what does it say? How do you get out of the desert? It says the old generation has to die off. It doesn't mean everybody in old physical bodies has to physically die. The root of the word generation is genere. It means cause. All of the causes in your unconscious that would lead you to some form of hostility or fear must in your lifetime be faced and removed. Elsewise they become your physiological, emotional, and mental destruction. Live in, bring forward, forgive the hostility and fear, and live in the active presence of love. And the gift is eternal life. And we join you in having the best year yet of your eternal